Well, there are certain songs that I have learned over the years that my audiences are drawn to. Some of the stuff is, well, I'll give you my set list. Thinking of You, um, was a mild hit for Loggins and Messina. I think it was one of the three singles that we had that did well. So that song is popular among the masses. Um, Watching the River Run, even though it was never a hit single, is went on what we used to call underground radio or FM radio when it first started. It just played it a lot. Uh, Who Corner, for example, again, not a hit record, but played so much. And many families used to sing that song to their kids. And so a lot of our audiences love to hear that because they sang it to their children. Um, Danny's song, it's just one of those songs people used to get married to, for example. Can't leave these songs out of a set. Um, uh, and some people say, well, don't you get tired of playing this stuff over and over? What I don't get tired of is the reaction that the audience has. For me, the joy of seeing them, smile or lip sync to the songs or sing along is part of the joy I get of being a performing artist. So my goal is to try to bring those arrangements to them as close as I can to the original arrangements given the musicians that I have. I mean, what I try to do is to grab the music to answer your question that I know they're familiar with, but also that I really enjoy playing, and also that the arrangements are interesting to me as a performing artist, to my band, and also to the audience. Well, I got beat up by the music business in Poco. And the way I got beat up, having produced the Buffalo Springfield, the Springfield was more of a folk rock band. So they had the ability to do folk music and put an edge to it, which was fashionable. When we got to doing country rock instead of folk rock, which was something that I had suggested to Richie that we think about before the band even started, because we'd already done folk rock and people were liking rock, but we needed something that was different, that could also go along with the style. For instance, in Richie's case, he wrote a song called Kind Woman, very country. He wrote a song called Child's Claim to Fame, very country. His sort of interests were moving into country music. Of course, I grew up in it in my life. I mean, as a recording engineer before I met them, I was working in a country western studio and working with James Burton, Dorsey Burnett, Roger Miller, all of these what you call rockabilly artists. So that all felt pretty natural to me to want to do that. And I was also a musician, which most of the Buffalo Springfield didn't know until I raised my hand to audition as a bass player. So that music was very comfortable, and it was easy for me to suggest to Richie that we do that. So fast forward, we ended up creating what was called country rock. The problem was the radio stations that were country would not play them because they were too rock. The rock stations wouldn't play them because they were too country. And therefore, even though we could sell out concerts all over the United States, we couldn't sell records. They just didn't want to play it. So when I left Poco and decided to become an independent producer and figure out who I was going to produce with CBS, I had a lot of artists that were sent to me. Andy Williams was sent to me, wonderful artist. I was just too young to produce him, and I didn't feel I could do a good job. Olivia Newton-John was sent to me, again, a wonderful artist, but she was a pop artist, and I felt needed something other than what my interests were. Dan Fogelberg came to me. Dan Fogel was a great artist. And when we started talking, I said, why would you choose me? Why are you choosing me to want to make your record? And he says, I just love Poco. I want to make a Poco record. Well, I just told you the answer to that. And I had to say, I'm sorry, but I spent the last 3 years of my life making Poco records, and they don't sell. And I don't want to go down that road again. You need to find somebody who will do that. When Kenny came along, even though that he was not established as an artist and never really had a band or a group, and no managers, no agents, no nothing. The one thing that he did have was a voice and a love for different styles of music. And because he had been hired, by ABC Dunhill, I think it was to write songs for them, because he could sound like Leon Russell if he wanted to, or he could sound like Elton John, or he could sound like anybody, because he had this incredible voice that he could twist. And the more time I spent with him, I thought, this might be the artist to try and break, because I can do diversified music with him. Which is why Winnie the Pooh has more of an ethereal sound than it did when the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band did it. I wanted to make it so that it was more childlike, so that adults could appreciate it in a different way. That's why we did Listen to a Country Song, because it had a country genre. That's why we did the trilogy, because it had both, it had an R&B rock to it, but it gave it a feeling we could move anywhere from Loving Me to Make a Woman Feel Wanted, which was very rock and roll, rockabilly, and The Peace of Mind, which was almost gospel. So the album that I saw Kenny doing was more diverse, to where he had a better opportunity to get airplay on that first record, where the rock stations couldn't say, well, we can't play it because it's not rock enough, or the country stations couldn't play it because it's not country enough. But on the merits of the songs alone and the arrangements, I felt he'd have a better opportunity. So I just felt that even in my own career, as you asked the question, from that point on, I just said, look, I'm never going to get pigeonholed again, that I only make this kind of music or that kind of music. I even, after Loggins and Messina, I had to stop and say, I need to find a new direction for me as a musician, so I can grow and not just stay in the quote unquote Loggins and Messina style of guitar playing. And that's why Oasis was made. It was more of a Latin rock album, and it forced me to learn how to play that instrument and sonically learn something different, both in genre and in playing styles and fingering stuff. I mean, it's the only way one learns. You got to jump in the pool and learn how to paddle.